In the summer of 1996, the city of Idaho Falls, Idaho, was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors. A safe, close-knit community where doors were rarely locked, and violent crime was a distant thought. But in June of that year, something happened that would shake that sense of safety to its core. An 18-year-old woman, just starting her adult life, was found brutally murdered inside her own apartment. The crime would spark a decades-long investigation, one that would lead to a wrongful conviction, an innocent man spending 20 years in prison, and the eventual capture of the real killer through one of the most controversial tools in modern policing, genetic genealogy. This is the story of Angie Dodge. A case that became a landmark in the history of DNA investigations, and a testament to the relentless love of a mother who refused to give up. Angie Dodge was 18 years old. Full of life. Smart, independent, and ready to live on her own for the first time. She had recently moved into a small apartment in downtown Idaho Falls, only 3 weeks before everything would change. Her mother, Carol Dodge, remembers her daughter as determined but also vulnerable, someone still finding her way in the world. On the night of June 12, 1996, Carol saw Angie for what would be the last time. Angie seemed thoughtful, almost reflective. She said, "It's so hard growing up." She put her head on my shoulder, and we just rocked back and forth. I told her I loved her. I'm so grateful those were my last words to her. The next morning, Angie never arrived for work at the beauty supply store where she was scheduled to open. A friend went to check on her. When she got there, the door was unlocked. Inside, she found Angie's body. The scene was horrifying. Angie had been stabbed and slashed 14 times. There were clear signs of a struggle. And she had been sexually assaulted. But there was no sign of forced entry. Whoever had done this had either been let in, or had found a way inside without breaking in. For Idaho Falls police, the murder was unlike anything the city had experienced. Former Chief of Police Mark McBride would later recall that the community was quiet, peaceful, until this. Investigators did have one critical piece of evidence: the killer had left behind semen at the scene. That sample contained a complete DNA profile, what DNA expert Greg Hampikian called a pristine identification, one man to the exclusion of everyone else on the planet. In theory, it should have been enough to catch the killer quickly. But the case would not be that simple. Police began collecting DNA from dozens of local men. They interviewed friends, acquaintances, even casual contacts. One man they spoke to was Christopher Tapp, a 20-year-old who didn't know Angie personally. His DNA didn't match the killer's. He denied having anything to do with the murder. But after more than 28 hours of interrogation over 23 days, something unexpected happened. Tapp confessed. In his statement, he claimed he had been at Angie's apartment with 2 friends the night she was killed. He said that during an argument, one of his friends began stabbing her while Tapp held her down. The confession shocked Carol Dodge, who had never heard of Tapp before. She thought, how could he do this to my daughter? But there was one glaring problem: Tapp's DNA did not match the semen found at the scene. Despite the lack of physical evidence tying him to the murder, prosecutors moved forward. In May 1998, after a 13-hour deliberation, a jury found Christopher Tapp guilty of first-degree murder and rape. His sentence: 30 years to life in prison. But for Carol Dodge, something didn't add up. Why would Tapp take a life sentence and not identify the other person he claimed was there? Tapp had named several people over time, including someone called Mike. Police investigated each lead. No DNA matches. And with that, the case went cold. While the police file gathered dust, Carol Dodge refused to stop searching. She studied the science of DNA testing. She pushed for new methods to be used in her daughter's case. In 2009, she reached out to Greg Hampikian, a well-known DNA expert. Together, they urged authorities to try familial DNA searching, looking for partial matches that could identify relatives of the killer. Idaho law didn't allow familial searches in the criminal database. So Carol proposed something more radical, searching public genealogy databases. In 2014, detectives tried exactly that. In the summer of 2014, police searched a now-defunct public database once owned by Ancestry.com. They got a hit. The DNA profile was a 34 out of 35 marker match to the crime scene DNA. It belonged to a man named Michael Usry Sr. Police knew he wasn't the killer. The match wasn't exact, but it meant a close relative might be. Their focus shifted to his son, Michael Usry Jr., a filmmaker. Usry's films included dark themes, including a convict describing a stabbing. And, years earlier, he had passed through Idaho Falls during a road trip. To investigators, the coincidences were alarming. In December 2014, Idaho Falls detectives, along with Louisiana State Police, brought Usry Jr. in for questioning. They took his DNA. A month later, they cleared him completely. His DNA did not match. But the experience left Usry shaken, and with lingering questions about police use of genetic databases. The investigation into Usry went nowhere. But the renewed attention to the case kept Carol Dodge motivated. She began working closely with Usry, even creating a family tree in hopes that one of his distant relatives might match the killer's DNA. Meanwhile, advocates began re-examining Christopher Tapp's confession. The Idaho Innocence Project took up his case. They discovered something disturbing: videotapes of 7 polygraph sessions that had never been closely reviewed. The tapes showed detectives using the polygraph not as a truth-finding tool, but as a means of psychological pressure. They threatened Tapp with the death penalty. They told him the machine could read his subconscious. Over weeks of questioning, Tapp's story shifted multiple times. Each time, details were fed to him. Even Carol Dodge began to believe Tapp had been railroaded. In March 2017, with new evidence mounting, the prosecution offered a deal: Tapp's murder conviction would remain, but the rape charge would be vacated. He would be released with no probation. Tapp took the deal. He walked out of prison after 20 years, but still legally guilty of murder. In 2019, new Idaho Falls Police Chief Bryce Johnson made Angie's case a top priority. Working with genetic genealogist Cece Moore and Parabon Nanolabs, they uploaded the killer's DNA to the public site GeneMatch. They found a family tree connected, distantly, to the Usry family. Following a paper trail, they discovered a man named Brian Drips, who had lived across the street from Angie in 1996. Drips had moved away just weeks after the murder. Detectives collected his DNA from a discarded cigarette butt. It was a match. When confronted, Drips confessed to raping and killing Angie, and said he acted alone. With Drips' confession, Chris Tapp was fully exonerated. He became the first person in the world cleared by genetic genealogy. In 2022, he received an $11.7 million settlement for his wrongful conviction. Brian Drips pleaded guilty in 2021 and was sentenced to 20 years to life. Carol Dodge had spent 23 years fighting for justice. She now runs a nonprofit called 5 for Hope, funding cold case work across the country. She believes genetic genealogy is the key to solving countless cases. Michael Usry still supports careful limits on the technology. The debate continues, but for Carol Dodge, one thing is certain. Without genealogy, we would never have found my daughter's killer. It is the key that opens the door to justice.